Welcome everyone. If you're new here, then we do 18 breaths of Qigong in order to open the space in your awareness for something new. And that's what I have. I have something that, as far as I know, I've never heard said before. Maybe. And so this whole thing is about getting towards a solution, right? And solution comes from within each of us. And so, but if we are always referencing the past, right? We can't fucking get a solution from what we've done already, right? So if we fill our mind with um, this preconceived notions based on experience, then we are unable to uh, be cognizant of the new, right? So we empty our minds. So it begins with each of us, right? And Qigong is a physical standing meditation that gets the energy flowing and also brings you into the moment because you have no choice. When your awareness is inside your body, then you are in the moment. And so that's the key. The meditation is all times at once, right? And that only one time exists, and that's right now. So we get into the horse stance, and it's not, an extreme horse stance. It's the traditional feet at shoulder width. Bend the knees to obscure your toes when you look down. Turn the hips under by pushing the lumbar out and the thoracic forward. Don't flex. The only thing flexing is your quads and your shoulders. But you're maintaining a position. And that is this hugging of the tree in front of your navel, dropping the chin, and we'll do 18 breaths. Turn your hands out. And then move your hands to the center position, which is in front of your heart. Still hugging a tree and making your arms in a bow shape. Turn your hands outward. Now the third position, maintain a horse stance, straighten the spine, drop the chin, hands in front of the forehead, still in the bow shape. Drop the shoulders, flatten the back, horizontally and vertically. Drop the chin. Let's do one more. And on that final out breath, make it silent and feel your spine extend apart, all of the vertebrae extending upward. So, if you're listening, and you're waiting for the novelty, right? Well, that's it right there. Unless you're a return listener, that's partially it. So yeah, it opens the space for the new, and the new is a gift, right? So, and you can't take credit for a gift. Like when you relinquish your thinking, which is your experiential self-reference, right? Then your mind is full, right? And that's all you, right? That's you fucking protecting one, or that is one protecting one's identity, right? I'm not saying you, but we all do it. So it's you, one, right? There's this, we forget because of our conditioning, but we have to remember, right? And to tap ourselves on the shoulder when we realize that we're all about the past, and thinking is all about the past. You can't develop thought without experience. And, thinking is, to be transferred into information that is shared, then it has to become language. But thinking has, this gestalt, a mosaic that each mind produces, and each mind puts it all together differently. And that's because we are all unique, right? And we have unique gifts. But thinking is we develop these images, whether we are word thinkers or image thinkers, or the combination of the two. And it becomes, the way that we see the world, right? And that's all nurture, right? So that's all conditioning. And conditioning that requires constant reinforcement is unnatural, obviously, because we drift back to our nature, which is to the realization that the constant maintenance of identity and protection of identity is, a waste of time and energy, right? Because it's divisive, right? And because of the way human beings live, we live as a collective by exchanging value with each other, right? We've been over this. And so, I give these chats or whatever, these monologues. And again, they just come out. But it's definitely has a theme because I'm trying to impart this recognition of what it is to be, alive as a sentient being walking the surface. Whatever you want to think of it, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, really, because we're here, and there's wisdom available, right? Which is action that makes sense, that is in alignment with our nature, right? And again, right, this is the tricky thing right here. Our nature we are constantly told that our nature is selfish, right? For lack of, a more profound term, I mean, that's what it is, right? But that's what has to be constantly reinforced. Right? And that's not how we live, right? How we live is an exchange with each other. So this competition versus cooperation aspect, it's not that there isn't a place for competition, right? It's just that's the idea that others are a threat, right? Is the result of a dominantly competitive mindset, right? And that relies on the assumption, which I was speaking of, which is this condition, right? We're conditioned to believe something about our nature, and that is when I say the majority belief, right, that it could be transferable to nearly everyone, is that, right, that our nature is to be selfish, right? And so we behave accordingly from that positioning, and that colors the way the pattern of our society unfolds over time. Right, we've been over it. But if I say it again and it comes out in a cogent way, I'm, I can be satisfied with that, I guess, in a way that's reproducible and, easy to understand, and in which case there's also, right, because that's what it comes down to. That's the crux of the argument right there, is what is our nature, right? And so our nature is to provide value to others. Right? That's what we're built to do. Right? That's what all of these faculties and opposable, right? OT, opposable thumbs, right? Like we can, anyway, yeah, that's how we live. We exchange with each other, so that's the dominant motivation, right? For expenditure of energy. The competitive, if allowed to dominate and be, as it has, there's its place. The competitive has its place, and I think this is where the conversation goes a lot of the time, which is, the competition versus cooperation as the primary source of innovation, one, and the motivation, right, of individuals, right? Their decision making process includes this assumption, right, that ultimately everyone's out for themselves, right? And so prepare accordingly, right? Right. Um, and so, right, that right there, if allowed to aggregate over time in society, creates a stratification, right? Because once a control over um, a necessity is established, then the motivation is to maintain that control, right? So it ends up being that the society gets stratified, right? And there's this whole thing that it's like such a tired talk about this idea that organization without leadership is impossible, right? And so this is almost the whole rationalization for the maintenance of the capstone, right, which is the controlling influence, right, that maintains the flow of currency, the current, maintains the current of energy, and siphons most of it off, right, to maintain this artificial system um, that maintains the status quo, right? And revolution, right, just ends up with the same system being reestablished. After if the system is allowed to progress, it develops into an unbalanced state, like, right, and then collapses. But that's part of it. Right, that collapse actually reestablishes the value of the currency that will be put into place, right, and the whole thing starts again, right? So it requires this discontinuous growth, if you were to graph it, right? And this is the Groundhog Day effect that I speak of, right? If you look at history, you can see this, these spikes and then collapses and spikes and collapses. And, right, don't come at me with that one because that's an easy fucking, it's like, we don't need to talk about that. Like, that's a lot of what the truth is like, okay, we've kind of established that there's a pattern you can see in history, and the details, are not as important as recognizing that there is a pattern, right? A general pattern on aggregate that occurs, and which has a limit, right? This behavior, and that's what I always say is that there is a limit to it, right? And so we see right now that we must be approaching some kind of a threshold because of what's happening in the world, and that power structure is trying to adjust it in a way that maintains the current, the current, the flow of current, the current energy, right? And that can only be done, right, if it's, more automated, right? So the limit is also a gateway to the alternative, right? Because recognition of the limit, right? It's just like getting off a speeding train before it collides with the station, and getting off in a way that is not catastrophic to your health. Right? How's that done? Um, you get off and onto another um, system, right? product system is like a train, right? And the way society functions is a system. It's a super system, right? And so you jump onto a different model, right? One that is in alignment with our nature, which is in alignment with nature, right? Which is this um, adherence to natural polarity, right? Um, and so, right, um, this avoidance of death in our current system, right, prevents real living, right? So it's almost like this insurance policy that society offers, right, that they offer, right, is a bogus deal, you know. And so our insurance is actually not that we buy into a system that buffers us, right, with their solution, um, is that we recognize that we don't need to be offered a solution when there's one already inside of us, which is recognizing our nature as we are built to exchange value with others, right? That's the primary motivation. Making sure that others can't provide their own value just diminishes and reduces the amount of value that potentially is available. you know, and so it's uh, that's the whole thing, right? Is the abundance model of value is that the more everyone gets to live fulfilling lives, the more the is available for everyone. Right? It's a never-ending supply because uh, living adds to it constantly, right? And so this is the argument, right? How do you promote our nature, which is to create, right? We all have these particular gifts, and over thousands of generations, we've branched into different specialists, right? But we're all born with a way to exchange with others, and that's how we live. So we facilitate that, right? We don't negate all of this energy by making it so that there's this built-in loss, and it's not utopian. It's not. It would be subject to polarity, which is contrast. There's no living without contrast. That's how we experience it. Right? But the recognition that um, of our purpose, right, as a sentient being, right, is to add to the luster of creation, right, is to accentuate it in accordance with natural polarity. Seems pretty easy to understand if you understand the concept of polarity. Right? So that's polar relationships are what we often, as discerning earth walkers, um, as opposites, right? They're opposites, right, to our perception, but in fact, right, one defines the other, and so they can't exist without each other, and so unity is polarity is unity in disguise, right? It's a union that cannot be divided, and it undergoes a rhythm, right? In which case one is superior and the other is inferior, and then they switch places, right? Right? Copy, right? This is fairly easy to comprehend. But living involves this acceptance of a paradox, right? And the allowance of um, a superposition, right, of two things at once, which is that we are individuals and the collective at once, and we are separate but one. And in the mundane aspect is, we can see that all of creation is interconnected and interdependent. Right? So it's like, yeah, um, what, how do we do it, right? How do we make the choice, right, to um, uh, understand that interdependence and allow it to be, right, without this destruction, right, this sacrifice, right? That's unnatural. It's like the lottery, that short story where everyone shows up. I don't know, whenever it is, and they all draw lots, and whoever has a black dot gets stoned to death. And it's for the good of the community. It's it's like an insurance policy that you sign up for. But anyway, yeah. That's it for now, you guys. Love.